Fabulous. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for a small business development workshop, Concerts 101, How to Enhance Your Events with Live Music. So the Chamber is really grateful to provide this offering free of charge to our Chamber members because of the generosity of our sponsor, Lake Superior College. So before we go ahead and introduce our speaker, I'd like to invite Daniel Fanning, the Vice President of Institutional Advancement and External Relations at Lake Superior College, to say a few words on behalf of their sponsorship. So go ahead, Daniel. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Chris. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm going to keep it real brief. I just like to say on behalf of Lake Superior College, we're just proud to be a partner with the Chamber on these events. It's all about community and education, and that's right up our alley. So we're just really proud to be part of this. Enjoy working with Chris. You always do such a great job of organizing all this, and always hear from great speakers like you're going to hear from Emma today. So just thanks for letting us be part of it, and thanks for being here.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dan. Without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing to you our speaker for today. It's a timely presentation following the heels of Duluth's Homegrown Music Festival. So Emma Diener is the entertainment curator at the Deck. She is really involved in Duluth's music scene, performing on drums with Superior Siren. We look forward to learning from Emma and how to amplify your event with the addition of live music and what it takes to create that memorable gathering. So Emma, thank you for being here and take it away.
Thanks so much, Chris. So good to be here today with everyone. It's so exciting. So just to give you a little brief intro about myself, I'll tell you a little bit more about my radio records, booking, and band experience. But I want this to be a little interactive. I know you're all, I can't see any of you, which is just fine. I'm imagining a nice crowd here. So like we're in a concert club. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat. If I don't see them right away, we'll get to them at the end of the session. We'll have a Q&A, but if there's something that sparks your curiosity while we're talking here, feel free to pop it in the chat and I'll try to answer it in real time. I also welcome any reactions or raising of hands, so feel free to do that. We've got some folks here producing on the back end to help make sure we answer all your questions. So thank you so much for being here and for caring about live local music. I'm going to get started with the presentation here. So just one moment while I pull that up. And before we get started, I do want to hear a little bit more about why you all are here and what kind of questions you have. So you don't have to go on screen, but if you're open to unmuting yourself and letting me know a little bit more about you, I would love to hear. So I'll start it off. I'm going to ask you a few questions, all right? Your name, who you're repping, your business, and what brought you here to this session in particular, what you're hoping to learn and grow from, as well as the last concert you went to. If you remember that before times, maybe it was just at the Homegrown Music Festival, maybe it was a big arena show before the pandemic. I'm curious where you hear live music. And then also any requests for bands here in Duluth, Minnesota that you want to hear at the Deck. I'm all ears. All right. So I'm Emma. She, her, hers are my pronouns. I was born in Duluth, grew up along the North Shore, and here representing not only the Duluth Entertainment Convention Center, but also independent musicians here in Duluth and in Minnesota in general. The last concert that I went to was my own, which is kind of silly, but I recently performed as part of the Homegrown Music Festival at Sacred Heart Music Center with Superior Siren on the Friday night of the festival, which was such an honor to be there in front of a live audience again. It's been over 2 years since Valentine's Day of 2020 that we performed in front of a live audience, so that was a really memorable experience to have. And the bands that I would like to book, there's so many, but I'm trying real hard to bring Wilco back because they were here right before the pandemic hit, and Duluth just has a love affair with Wilco, plus they have a key to the city. So trying to bring them in. And we also have a lead on Vesta as well. So you're getting an inside scoop on that one. Next up, Robin, you put your screen on, so I'm going to pick on you.
Hi, Emma. It's good to see you. Yeah, I'm Robin, she, her pronouns. I'm with the Essentia Health Foundation, and I saw this webinar come up and was like, oh my gosh, I got to hear Emma talk about this topic. We are not typically in events oriented foundation. We do a lot of major giving and work with a lot of grateful patients and employee giving at Essentia Health. But we do have an annual golf event at Northland, and it's been happening for probably 30 years. So the idea of bringing music to that event, it's a really casual, fun day, kind of a golf scramble. It's August 1st this year. And having music at our evening program, I think would be really special. So excited to think more about that. To be honest, I do not remember the last concert I went to. I think it was an outdoor concert at Earthrider like 3 years ago. So I need to get out of my house and go to a concert, and this is a great reminder for that. Yeah, looking forward to hearing other people's stories.
All right, how about Eric? Let's hear from you.
All right, Eric Silliendahl. I'm a banker with a U.S. Bank here in Duluth. I also am on the board of the All-American Club that is down in Lincoln Park, not too far from like Caddyshack and Bent Paddle and in the nice reviving craft district that we have down there in Lincoln Park. I would say, let's see, your last concert I went to, I would say was probably also, I would say not a concert. I don't consider Earthrider a concert, but I do enjoy live music. I was at Earthrider probably a few times last summer. I'd say the last concert that I really remember was probably the last time the Trampled played down at the Bayfront. I'm really looking forward to Trampled coming back to Bayfront again this year. My wife's birthday is July 7th, so we were there for a while there calling Trampled's July 4th concert a birthday party for her. So this year I think it actually is on July 7th. So looking forward to the Trampled concert. Locally, I am a fan of like Mason Jennings. I know he comes up every once in a while and plays at Sacred Heart. Wouldn't mind seeing him. Jack Johnson. Actually, I think I went to a concert one time. It was Wilco, Mason Jennings, and I'm not sure if Jack Johnson was a part of that concert or not, but Jack Johnson and Mason played together one time. It was a great little concert festival. And then I think I saw Wilco with Mason Jennings one other time too. So yeah, Wilco would be a good one, but Jack Johnson would be great. Mason would be great.
Love it. Thanks for the recommendations. That would be good. And on the lake too, Bayfront is such a beautiful space. And yes, Trample is coming to town on July 9th at Bayfront Festival Park with Jenny Lewis. So get your tickets while you can. It's like the Duluth family reunion in the summer. Alrighty, how about Brian? Let's hear from Brian.
Got to find the right buttons. Sorry. Hi, I'm Brian Barber. I'm a videographer and animator here in Duluth, and a very part-time, very amateur musician as well. And I saw this come up and I thought this would be really interesting. I thought what you guys were doing in Glen Sheen was amazing. The concerts on the pier. And so far, even just what I saw at the deck during Homegrown was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So Homegrown was the last set of concerts I saw. I saw Superior Siren, I saw Brienne. I'm guessing Brienne was probably technically the last concert I saw then, because that was Saturday, I think. But yeah, I just thought this sounded really interesting. So
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. So happy to have you here. You can make a music video for all of us.
okay, all right.
Too. He makes music videos, everyone, if you need one. And how about Brienne? Let's hear from you, another fellow musician in the crowd.
Hi, Emma. So great to be here and to hear from you. I'm excited for this. So my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the manager of sales and events at the College of St. Scholastica. This image you see behind me is Mitchell Auditorium, which is where I work. And I would say the last concert I went to was at Earthrider, the last show / concert. And that was to see Cash Only with Rich Mattson performing as Johnny Cash, which is just perfect. It was classic. And let's say, so I would say that I would love to see more artists like Jenny Lewis at Bayfront and at the Deck. I'm a big fan of Americana, alt country, and I've been enjoying a lot of the artists that have been brought in to the Twin Ports recently, but when I saw Jenny Lewis, my heart just went swoon. So I'm excited for her and more artists in that genre. And then what I'm hoping to learn today, I am of the belief that musicians and people who work in the arts can always learn from each other and what they're doing. And anytime that I attend something from these professional development series, I always take away 1 or 2 little nuggets of information that change the way that I do my work. And that's of great value to me. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Excellent. Love that. Melissa, let's hear from you.
Hey guys, sorry I missed the very beginning. I'm actually working remotely. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're all
Okay.
good. So we're just doing
Hi.
intros. Let us know what you're interested in learning today. And then maybe a little bit about the last concert you went to and your request of bands to bring to Duluth.
Awesome. Yeah, and I also can't, I'm out in the country, so I can't use my camera or my Wi-Fi goes. So apologize for that. Let's see. I've been working with music people for quite a few years, booking at different places that I've worked, Sir Ben's and Sarah's Table. So I just want to refresh myself in the position I do now, which is marketing for a credit union, but we do some fun community events. And I kind of wanted to hop in here to see if there were any tips and tricks I could use and just hear from, and of course, hear from sweet Emma and what she's got going on. But I did a little homegrowning this year, not as much as normal, but my last show was last Friday night. I saw the Fontanelles and Anne Catherine and Fearless Mold Inventory, and that was really cool. But I'm a huge Superior Siren fan, of course. I love Earth Rider. All the things you guys already mentioned. I think you're doing an awesome job, and I can't wait to get outside and see some shows this summer. So pretty stoked.
Yes, me too. Right, Megan, let's hear from you. And then Jess, and we'll get the presentation going.
Perfect. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. My name is Megan Bell. I am at Skyline Social and Games up in Hermantown. The marketing manager here. We are very slowly dabbling in music. We started our first rock and bowl league this winter, which went really well. Definitely some lessons learned and some things to kind of figure out. But we bought a stage, so we've got it and we can use it. So just trying to figure out some ideas. We also do have live music on our patio in the summer. So just trying to figure out kind of the best way to go about this process. We know enough to be dangerous. And so just to kind of figure out the best way to promote and to reach out and all that kind of stuff. Loved going to the concerts on the pier at Glensheen and seeing all the new stuff at the Deck as well is exciting. Yeah, I guess in terms of recommendations, I am going to the Tramples concert. Already got my tickets. So we're good there, but honestly, I think the last one I went to might have been that one a few years ago. So I'm looking forward to more of that.
Yeah, more live music. All right, Jess, finish her up. You're the last one.
Hi, sorry, I'm at Caribou, so it's a little loud.
It's all good. I can hear you.
So I just started a new position not too long ago for the Brewhouse family. So I'm doing marketing for the Pickers Brewhouse, Barrel Room, Rathskeller, and Rideau Union. So we do a lot of live music at the Barrel Room and at Rathskeller, just like local musicians. And then I saw this webinar pop up and I was like, this would be perfect for us because I don't really know anything about like booking live music or anything like that. So I just figured I'd get whatever knowledge I can out of this. And I honestly can't remember the last concert that I've been to, but I've watched our local musicians play at Rathskeller quite a bit.
Excellent. I know, isn't that sad? We like can't remember what was that last show. It's been so long. So it's really exciting to see live music coming back safely and soundly. So stay tuned for more. Outside is always good in these pandemic times too for outside venues. So without further ado, let's dive on in. I'm going to get this started and we'll rock and roll. So un momento here. Just while we're here, just make sure that you are on mute throughout. And then if you do have any questions that come up, please let me know via the chat. So I'm going to get this rolling for you and see what happens. All right, so Concerts 101. I really wanted to offer this just because I love local music and I truly believe in the power that it has to transform your events from a regular gathering to an extraordinary occasion that's very memorable, it sticks in people's minds, and it creates a feeling that you really can't duplicate anywhere else. So I wanted to be able to connect local businesses with the local musicians in hopes that it will enhance your event. Because we have a wide variety of creators here that can really transform your gatherings into a memorable occasion. So set the vibe. All right, these are life hacks from the last 10 years of my experience in the music industry. I started out at KUMD, now the North 103.3 FM, as a DJ on college radio, daytime programming, as well as promotions. Worked with building a street team and the college to help promote the basement, which was our college radio programming after 9. And then it grew from there, from an internship to a part-time job, to a more part-time job, to then eventually a full-time job as their community outreach director, overseeing marketing, membership, and underwriting sales. So a little bit of sales experience, a little bit of promotions, and then learning all about our live local music community through that radio station was just blew my mind. So those are some of the first days that I spent at Bayfront Festival Park, representing the radio station. And now I get to host gatherings at Bayfront. So it's really a full circle kind of moment here. I then also worked at the Electric Fetus, now closed here in Duluth, but it's still going strong in Minneapolis. So please do support your local record shops. And I'll also give a shout out, Brianne, I believe your partner has popped up a little mini record pop-up shop here and there. So you can find that at Bent Cattle every once in a while if you want to swap records. But there I learned a lot about the promotion industry and the recording industry of music too, of how bands promote their music and how local bands can also promote music through record stores and the selling of records, tapes, LPs, all that jazz. And then I transitioned into Glensheen, where I started booking bands at the mansion. So in addition to my event sales manager role, I also curated Glensheen Concerts on the Pier, as well as Glensheen Unplugged, which was an intimate acoustic concert series inside of the mansion. So I have a few events there. And then while I was with the radio station, I also put together a festival called North Fest, which featured 10 bands on 7 stages in one day. So those are some of the case studies that we'll dive into a little bit later today to show you how those were put together. But ultimately, I just want to share a little bit more insight onto how to get started with booking music at your bands, at your venues. And I also am a musician myself. So I have some experience touring not only in Duluth and Minnesota, but also the Midwest. And our band even had the honor of performing at First Avenue Main Road before Devotchka, which was a band that I used to spin on the college radio airwaves. So that was another full circle moment there as well. So I have a few, if you want to, ask any questions about what to have in your venue space, we'll talk about that a little bit more. I do see that we have a question came up. That's right, Brianne, Round Here Records is going to be at Cedar Lounge tomorrow night. And the name of my band is Superior Siren. So you can check us out on the webs and all streaming platforms too. All right, we're going to the next slide. There we go. So the basics. First, you want to start with who, what, when, where, why. So who? Know your audience. Who are you trying to bring into your event? Is this a fundraiser? Is this a social hour? Is it a festival? What is the purpose and who is your audience? You really want to be able to cater to them and know that they are going to like the music. It's not necessarily exactly what they want to hear sometimes. If they maybe come into a loud, ruckus environment, maybe it's something that you need a more calm and subdued music in the background for a dinner party or something like that. So know who your audience is. If it's family friendly, if it's couples, if it's something in between, an older audience, younger audience, make sure you know who you're inviting to your event so you know what kind of music to program. Or maybe it's your goal of who you want to come in. Who is the audience that you want to expose to your business? Maybe you're trying to tap into a younger demographic or an older demographic. So try to use the music to help complement the audience that you're bringing in. And also challenge them a little bit. It's something that I like to do at Glensheen, where I would bring in music that people may have heard of a local band, or they may have never heard of, but they knew they were going to hear a good quality live local experience. So try to test the boundaries a little bit too, when you're thinking about the kind of music you want to bring into your venue. And also vet it as well. Before you book a band, make sure you just explore who they are. Check out their website, their social media channels, pictures, videos, see them live if you can. So you really know what you're getting yourself into, and making sure that it aligns with the goals of your event, as well as the ethics of your business too. Because you don't want to create a controversial moment when the FCC clean version of their song isn't being performed. So just be mindful of that when you're booking. Then what? Is this a festival? Is it a fundraiser, a social hour, company picnic, a food fight, whatever? Make sure that whatever kind of event you're hosting, you find the best way to harness music within that programming of the day. So for a social hour, it's so nice to have music right away when people arrive. No one wants to be the first one at a party, and when you are and it's quiet, it's already awkward. So might as well warm it up with some music. If you're hosting a festival, you'll want to have multiple bands performing. That helps spread out the timeline, moves the crowd around, gives something to get excited about. And the way that you can craft it is kind of starting with a smaller group and building towards those larger groups, similar to what you've experienced in concerts itself. The entertainment programming should entice people to go to the show or go to your event. So that's another thing that you can use to increase your attendance by bringing in a notable band that people have heard of, or just knowing that there's going to be live music there, that already elevates your music and your event. And you also want to mirror the energy that you would like to create there. So if you want this to be a fun, festive environment, you're going to want to bring in bands that also give off that kind of energy with their live performance and the sound of their music too. If this is something where you just need to set the tone for the day or for a social hour before making a big fundraising pitch, then it may just need to be some pleasant background music, and that is okay too. A lot of bands, every once in a while, you could also request, hey, do you do instrumentals versus vocals? So they can always provide that as well if you think vocals might be too distracting during your event, if it is something like background music that you're interested in. Then when? Save the date. You're going to want to start planning at least 3 months out, if not more. Ideally, a year in advance will give you plenty of time to work out all the kinks along the way, especially if it's your first time experimenting with music at your events. If you're a smaller venue and you don't need to plan that far out, or maybe your organization just doesn't plan that far out in advance, that's okay. You'll just have a shorter timeline to work with and have to really hammer out some details to bring it to fruition. With Northfest, I only had 1 month to plan it because the radio station got grant funding to put this on. So I really had to hit the ground running with that one. And I don't advise it. So if you can plan far in advance, at least. Where? The venue can really make or break what your event is. You could host this at your venue, or you could go off-site. There's a plethora of really beautiful venues here in Duluth, not only inside, but also outside. So think of non-traditional spaces if you really want to create a unique quirk about your event, or maybe changing up the venue. Maybe you've always hosted it at one place. Try changing the location and seeing how that works out to help increase your attendance too. The more unique and interesting your venue is will also help bring in more people, in addition to adding that live music component too. The why. The why is a really big question. And now as we enter this pandemic state of in-person gatherings again, really consider why. Why are we gathering? What's the point? What is the purpose? And make sure that you have a really meaningful purpose, because now more than ever, people are really questioning their choices when they go out, who they go out with, and then re-entering that again. A lot of you, maybe haven't even been to a show for a while. So think about what that feels like and what would even make you want to go out again. And this is a new kind of culture shift that we're trying to change and cultivate by bringing people back together again. But when we do so, we need to be very purposeful with why we're doing it. So ask yourself that. Really great book if you're interested in the art of gathering, and if you are an event planner, if you bring people together often, it's a really great book that I'd recommend, How We Meet and Why It Matters by Priya Parker. She has a lot of really wonderful, wise words in there about the purpose of gathering. So I highly recommend checking that out, or just following her on social media. She's got a lot of wisdom nuggets about gathering and events that I think you'd find fascinating. So establish those things first, and then you can start the planning. Step one, you probably are going to have to submit a permit or some paperwork. And this is where planning in advance is really important. I included this image here. I'm a huge Wayne's World fan, and they put together a music festival in Wayne's World too. And they go to the parks department and they're like, how do we do this? And they have a bunch of permits that they have to submit. It's kind of the same thing in Duluth. So make sure you make friends with the city of Duluth, learn about all of the permitting that's required if you're using a park, for instance. Or I think we've got a few people in the waiting room here, so I'm just going to let them in so they can join. Got a 2 in there. Hi there. Welcome to our new attendees. You were just getting started, so enjoy the show. Feel free to enter any questions into the chat as well as we come along. So thank you for being here. But anyways, there's a good chance you're probably going to have to submit a permit. Duluth has a noise ordinance. So after 11 p.m., you got to keep it quiet outside. And really 10 p.m. is a good rule of thumb. That's what we have to go off of at Bayfront, because it is a natural amphitheater and we pump out the tunes to the rest of the hillside, as a lot of you have probably already heard. So be mindful of city ordinances, noise permits, the service of alcohol, and then any other street closures, things of that nature. Just check in with the city of Duluth to make sure you're not missing something you may not even know about, because you'd hate for your event to maybe get shut down because you didn't submit the appropriate permitting. But if you own your own venue, there's a good chance you probably don't have as much permitting. But this is also why you want to start in advance. So you're going to want to start a production timeline. Start with the big picture and work from the show backwards to help solidify your plan. So at the beginning, say you have a year out, which is awesome. If you don't have a year and it's just like 3 months, just split this timeline and shrink it up a little bit. So 12 months out, start the planning. Start with curating your vendor lineup. Who do you want to be part of this event? Are you bringing in offsite catering? Does your venue provide catering? What is that menu going to look like? That is another revenue stream for you, potentially, if you have a ticketed event, or if you have a free event, but you want to get food and beverage sales. That's a great way to increase your revenue, thereby having palatable options that the wide variety of people can enjoy. Or maybe you don't have catering, but you want to bring it in. Food trucks are a really great way to do that. There's a lot of local food trucks you can select from, but just make sure that you have the appropriate permitting and documentation in place. A lot of them need to have Minnesota Health requirements in place before they can vend. So you'll want to work with them to make sure all of that's in place as well. Again, that's why the time makes a big difference. You'll also want to identify the artists that you will be selecting. So that's when you start exploring, what kind of live music do we want to bring in here? I've gone to that show, maybe that band would be fun, or thinking about the genres of music that you might want to look into. This is also when you would start looking into the production. So when I talk about production, that is the production, the technical production of the show, stage, sound, and lights. Here in Duluth, we have a lot of local vendors to select from that can provide sound and light options if you don't have your own stage or your own sound system or your own operator of that system. So you're in good hands if you have an outside vendor that you're working with, or if you're looking for independent sound techs, there's actually quite a few in the area that I'd be happy to recommend. So you can always reach out to me with that too. This is also when you will start fundraising. So no matter what, you're going to have expenses associated with this, whether it is a fundraiser or just a fun community event that you want to host. You want to make sure that you cover your costs so it's sustainable and you can continue to create this year after year, because events cost money. And if you don't cover your costs, then what's the point? It is business and it does come down to your bottom line after all. But if you have the option of having like a foundation maybe that provides that support, that's a really nice thing that you can harness to be able to provide talent fees and compensate your artists correctly and the rest of the event too. But I'll tell you a little bit more about all of those things later and some other options of fundraising you may not be aware of when it comes to live music. Then about 9 months out, you'll want to start creating your communication plan. You could even start this in the beginning process too, but this is really how you're going to communicate your event to the public or to your invitees. When are you going to announce this event? When are you going to send invites out? What platforms are you going to use? Is this all on social media? Are you going to harness your website? Thinking about those channels that you have to communicate the event is really good. So then you have a consistent like timeline and words and language going out on all of your channels. So it's the same message. You can also start looking into sponsors. Another great way to support your events is through community support from corporate sponsors. And there's a lot that may have foundations or sponsorship grant opportunities that align with the mission that you have. So maybe your organization is health related. Well, maybe Essentia has a grant that could help with that. Or you have another thing, we have a wide variety of local banks and credit unions that are very generous with their support. So think about those other institutions or logos that you've seen on sponsorships throughout the community that you could look into. Advertising is also key. Social media is really where it's at. So you'll definitely want to invest in paid advertising on social, whether it's Facebook and Instagram, boosted posts for a really little bit goes a long way on those platforms. So I highly recommend that. You also want to consider any print or other online media, whether it's through advertising on Perfect Duluth Day, Current, other community calendars, Visit Duluth, all of those free and paid advertising opportunities you'll want to go through, as well as public relations. So starting to think of who are your press contacts, TV, radio, print, what's your press release going to look like? Who are those contacts? So really talking through your communication plan at least 9 months out, getting everyone on the same page and knowing how to promote the show. Then launch time. So say 6 months out, you want to launch the event. That's when you announce the concert or announce the event details, and everything is confirmed by that point in time, 6 months out. This is when you promote it. So you use all of those channels you talked about in your communication plan and blast it out to your networks. This is also when you want to make sure you have all of your permits submitted. So before you announce an event to the public, you want to make sure that you have everything in place so the fire marshal isn't finding out about your event when it's on the front page of the Duluth News Tribune. Not a real life example, but could happen. You'll also want to make sure your booking is confirmed. So if you bring in live music, make sure you have that in writing, not only in an email, but also in a performance agreement. So then that covers you and the artist should a pandemic arise. And we'll get into that more later too. Then about 3 months out, you'll start working on those day of details to make sure the show runs smoothly. So this is when you check in with your vendor team, make sure they are well aware of the event details, ask if they have any questions, maybe you're fine tuning menus at this point in time, or other logistics that you need to have in place. You'll want to start crafting your day of timeline, and this you'll work with your vendors on that. So production company, if you hire that out for sound and light, you'll want to work with them to help with your load-in schedule for the bands, their sound check, and then the door time and the rest of the event programming. So the production team will help you to craft how much time they need to make sure the artist is not only arrived, they've checked in, they're loaded in, their instruments are on the stage, and they are there and ready to check their instrumentation to make sure that you have a rock solid performance, because you don't want to have a rocky or a quick sound check that just makes for disaster in the end. So you want to make sure everyone is set up and they can hear themselves and it sounds good in your venue as well. Then you'll also want to request or create your information from the bands or your talent. So a lot of times larger touring acts will have a technical writer as well as their personal hospitality writer. So that is what stage reinforcement they need. So how to amplify their instruments, basically. They're like, I need this mic with this input and I need monitors. And so there's a list of what their sound requirements are. And you take that list and you send that to your production team who's providing sound so they know what equipment to bring so they can amplify the music. The hospitality writer could include things like meals, food, Wi-Fi, green room, other requirements they may need to have. But I will tell you that a lot of local musicians in Duluth and in Minnesota don't have a lot of those stipulations in place. But just knowing that going into it, that you should be mindful of the artist's needs and requirements at all times is really important. So just asking those questions on booking will ensure that you have a smooth show the day of. That's a gist or an example of what a timeline would be. Now we'll go into the production details. So sound, here in Duluth, we have Sound Central. They're rock solid. I've worked with them for all the shows that we do. I've also worked with Duluth AV Logistics and AVR, Audiovisual Resources. So those three I have personal experience with. They're all really great and they all have their unique strengths and qualities and services that they provide. It's also nice to have a lot of options in town because everyone is booking pretty quickly here. So that's another thing, that planning 12 months out and securing your sound light package is huge because there's not as many to choose from. And these folks in Duluth are going all across the state and northern Minnesota, sometimes into Wisconsin, and they're touring quite a bit. So it's not guaranteed that they're going to be available on your date. So you really want to make sure you lock that in when you're planning the event. T&E Concert Services is another one similar to Sound Central. So Sound Central and T&E are kind of the leaders in this local area. They provide the stage, speakers, the PA, monitors, equipment, even backline, which is like a drum kit or bass amplifiers and things if your musicians either don't have it or maybe they're touring and they just can't bring all of that equipment with their small touring party in their vehicles. So those are the two for larger scale productions. And then AVR, Audiovisual Resources, and Duluth AV Logistics are really great for smaller scale productions with maybe just one musician or a trio, or you have a live speaker or a comedian or another form of entertainment that may not be a full scale band. So those are other options too. Lighting is a huge component with production. So you not only have the stage, but you don't want to have like fluorescent lights, right? You got to set the vibe. So they will be able to provide any unique lighting and also design too. So if you have an idea of what that concept is, they can collaborate with you. If you have no idea and just want to let the pros handle it, they can craft that up as well. So this is uplighting, stage lighting, fog, all the fun frills that you might see at a show. Even pyrotechnics. Ken from Duluth Event Lighting is a licensed pyrotechnic, so he can light off fireworks or other flame-related pyro that's part of the show. Sound Central and T&E also provide these options. And if you say already have a stage, maybe you already have a sound system in your venue, you won't necessarily need to work with them for equipment, but maybe you need a sound tech, someone to check the band, make sure it works, all the equipment works, you got all the cords and everything. So you'll want to have someone on the tech side running the show for you. So you don't have to do that yourself. Every once in a while, the musicians will have their own equipment, which is great, but I wouldn't always bank on that or even request that they bring that. If you have a venue and you want to host live music, it will be in your best interest to install a sound system at some point in time. It will eventually pay for itself, but to start off, you might just have to rent the equipment instead. Then other event pros that can help with your event. You can work with Northland Special Events, Sounds Unlimited, Pro Light and Sound. They are like DJs, so they have some cool silent disco options. Highly recommend that. But that could just set the vibe if you just need some background music before your live music kicks off. And then another local DJ recommendation is the Crunchy Bunch, which is like a band, but that's a little bit more customized, independent DJ collective that has a variety of different music to choose from. So that's another option too, because live DJs are super fun. It's way better than just having a playlist on your Spotify. Then photo and video. You want to make sure you capture this moment because you're going to put a lot of work into organizing this, and you'll want to make sure you encapsulate this moment to remember and promote it in the future. So make sure you have someone there to take photos and video as well. Skyline, I know you've got a great video production company on retainer, so make sure you bring them in whenever you have live music there. I know I've seen some of those videos. Really good. And food and beverage. You got to have food and beverage. You got to take care of your people. So think about those needs of what your guests will need during the event, as well as the not so shiny, sexy things like waste removal and porta potties and things like that. So make sure you keep that in mind as you're planning the event too. Music resources. If you're like, who do I book? I don't even know where to start. Homegrown Music Festival just took place here in Duluth, and they have a wide variety of over 200 bands featured on their website. So that's a place that you could go to check out local bands here in Duluth. Maybe there's some notable names. So you just go to their website, check out the schedule of the festival, and then you'll see all the different bands, and there's band bio that accompanies it. That's a really great way to learn more about local music here in Duluth. The Minnesota Music Coalition is another great resource that has a network of diverse Minnesota musicians. And then you can also just Google it too. You probably already know of a variety of Minnesota musicians. And I'll tell you more why musicians from Minnesota in particular are going to be a little bit more affordable for your bottom line too. You can also listen to the radio or stream it. The North 103.3 and the Current both have Duluth local shows where they have specific music from Duluth. The Current also has a Minnesota, the local show that has a broader scale of music. So you can tune into those programs. They also have them archived on their websites so you can learn more there. And then Town Talk, maybe there's word of mouth, your own live music experience. You can book your dream band. You could bring in Mason Jennings for something if you really wanted to. They're much more accessible than you think. This takes a little bit of negotiation and finding the right person. So talent buying. If you book them, they will come. That is what Wayne heard of in a dream from Jim Morrison. So if you book them, they will come. So the way to do that is to go to their website, go to their social media pages, find that contact information. You might have to slip into their DM with a message on Facebook because they don't have a website, or on their website, they probably do have a booking contact or some informational way to get a hold of them. So if you don't hear back right away, it's okay. They'll get back to you. You just have to maybe follow up a few times. You have to realize that musicians don't have a 9-to-5 necessarily, or maybe they do, and then they're a musician. So they're not that quick to respond sometimes. So you've got to be patient, but just follow up as best as you can. You'll want to budget for talent fees. So never expect that someone's going to play for free for exposure, or for a great opportunity, or for a trade, or pay them in drink tickets. It doesn't really work like that. So make sure you compensate your artist fairly and budget accordingly. $250 is kind of really basic and low per person or per musician. Most Minnesota musicians are looking for $1,000 to $5,000 for talent fees, or you can also make a statement and say, hey, we're going to have an event that pays well for artists, and that goes a long way, and it will also help establish your venue as a good spot to play. So setting a good talent rate is really where it's at. You can always ask what their going talent rate is, and it's going to waver a little bit. There's a lot of negotiation that goes into those talent fees. Sometimes it's set, and sometimes there's a little bit of wiggle room. So make sure you have a budget for talent, anywhere from 250 to 5,000. It's going to be somewhere in between. And just, you know, try not to lowball people. It can sometimes be insulting, or they might just not even want to play your venue. So it always kind of, the price is negotiable. And I would say local musicians are going to have a smaller talent fee. When you get out of Duluth, it's going to rise a little bit. That's another incentive to book locally, because it's going to save you money, and it also just feels good. And then maybe you have a great relationship with that artist, and then they end up curating a 4-month residency at your venue, and then they do a little bit of that work where they hold down the venue every night, but they bring in another artist to open for them or collaborate with them. So it gives you something to come back to every week. Something to also be mindful of is taxes. So if you pay a talent fee over $600, you will want to get a W-9 on file from the artist, so you can have that for your tax purposes. And then your organization or business would then be issuing that artist a Form 1099 at least 3 months prior to that tax filing time of April, so they can account for their income that they receive, because that's how they get paid. The other thing is that income tax isn't taken out of non-Minnesota residents entertainment. So if you book someone from outside of Minnesota, Minnesota has a non-resident entertainer tax that comes into play, where you will have to withhold 2% of the gross compensation that you are to pay that artist, and pay that out to the state of Minnesota. So keep that in mind. It's a really tricky tax thing there, but that is like the income tax that we would assess that artist, because they normally wouldn't pay that in their state. There are a few exemptions to that non-resident entertainer tax, which in Michigan and North Dakota are exempt from, and there's a form for that they fill out. And then if the talent fee is under $600, you don't have to worry about that. And then if the talent fee is under $2,000, you don't have to worry about that if it's for a public speaker. So if it's $2,000 and it's a musician, you do have to withhold. If it's $2,000 public speaker, you don't. So that's another reason to book locally, because you don't have to withhold those taxes. Expenses, you get what you pay for. So if you don't bring in the best production, you're gonna have some issues on the event end. So know what your budget is, get quotes and calculate your expenses before you put an offer in, because you'd hate to put all this work in and end up just not making money. Make sure you have a performance agreement in place. So get it in writing. You will want to draft this agreement to protect not only your organization, but also the artist, should there be a global pandemic or something else that comes up and they're unable to perform. You want to make sure that you are protected as well as that artist too, because you have to keep in mind they are holding that date for you. They could get booked by another entity. So, you know, if they may be requiring a deposit, be sure to pay that. And then just be mindful of the musician's end as well. Since if you end up canceling their show, you know, try to make good on that with another future offer to play or compensation. Clear and consistent communication is key to the success. There's a lot of moving parts with events, and you want to make sure everyone is well informed through all stages. So make sure that upon booking, they know who, what, when, where, why. They know the timeline a little bit, or at least have that little bit of time set aside so they know when to be there and when they're going to be done, so they can plan in advance. And then get marketing collateral to help promote the event. So get a band bio, photo, video, anything that they already have that you can use to help spread the word about your event. You'll want to make sure that you keep the artists informed along the way. So letting them know in advance before the event is publicly announced, so then they can help promote it themselves, giving them marketing collateral so they can promote that on their channels, because they work as one of your best sales reps to help increase event. So fundraising versus fundraising. Again, do not ask musicians to play for free. They're not, you know, the token that you put on the event to get people there, but they also need to be compensated for it. So there's a lot of different ways that you can fundraise. I call it fundraising sometimes when you don't make money, but you put on a great party. So if you have grant opportunities that are applicable to your organization, check out the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council here based in Duluth for our region. Sometimes they have nonprofit organization grants available, and the Minnesota State Arts Board as well for folks that are interested in hosting certain types of events. And it's also great to get in BIPOC population as well, because it's always a great initiative to serve underrepresented audiences and creators. And there's also a lot of grant funding out there as well to help you support those events. So take a look at those two sites to see if there's any applicable grant funding that you are that you could use. Then sponsors. So corporate sponsors, identify what your cause is and create that connection, because the cause can help lead you to other organizations that might want to buy into your event and help support that initiative. Use your social capital, all the connections that you have. You never know the people that you create with. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, put it out there. You never know when someone might be interested or who's really following you that could also help support your work. And create custom sponsorship practices. So this is where you really want to think about what would be meaningful for that organization, and what's a trade-off. If they're going to pay a few $1,000s to support this, how can we give them a good time? So making sure their logo and their name is mentioned on anything and everything you promote, giving them on stage mentions, maybe VIP seating at the show, any other fun perks that you can create, or free venue rental in the future for their organization to use. Anything that you have of value that you can match that dollar amount with, that is maybe not gonna, that's gonna maybe save you a little bit of money, or free things that you have to give away. Think about creating that package and having multiple levels, usually 3 to choose from: small, mid, and large scale. And making that medium one really good, because the mama bear option is usually what folks tend to go with. And then your budget. You do have to spend money to make money. A lot of annual events take about 3 years to turn a profit on. So sometimes you do have to have that initial investment and follow through as it builds and builds and builds. And then identify what your revenue streams are. You have parking fees, catering, food and other food and beverage, merch sales. You know, what are your revenue streams on site that can help amplify your event, as well as ticketing too. Expect talent fees to range, and also learn the art of tasteful negotiation too. It takes time and trial and error, and no one's going to be perfect, but you got to at least try. And Duluth and Minnesota musicians offer really affordable talent fees, so that's a good place to start. So with the communication plan here, I talked a little bit about that, and I know we just have a few minutes left, but here is where you really want to start laying that out. So your announce date. What date are you going to announce the event? Work backwards from there. What are some of the platforms that you have access to? Use all of them. Earned media. Write a press release, a really good press release with some quotes, all the information. You're almost like writing the story for them. And maybe even host a press event, giving them a little bit more, or maybe giving them a sneak peek of what the space would look like to really help buzz up the excitement for the event. And don't be afraid to pick up a phone too. Always call and follow back up with those media contacts, because they may not have seen your email come through, but if they get your call, they're probably willing to listen to you. And then for ticketing, if it is a ticketed event, make sure you have a good online advanced sales with a trusted ticketing outlet. So that's Ticketmaster, Eventbrite, brown paper tickets, or maybe you have your own software that you can use. Then collateral, make sure you have nice looking things. So contact for artist bios, photos, videos, all of that stuff. And then consider, what's your special quirk? What's going to set you apart from other events? Then you'll also want to explore local event calendars to help get that listing out there. So visit Duluth, Chamber of Commerce, Perfect Duluth Day, other local ad agencies. How to spread the word. Billboards, you probably don't need to invest in a billboard. You should put that into social media instead. Then the launch. So 6 months out, announce the event. 5 months, maybe you come in with some early bird discounts that are available. 4 months out, talk about a VIP experience. Maybe you add additional musicians to the lineup 3 months out. Another fun thing to buzz it up in the 2 months out, and then the final push 1 month in advance. So every month, just kind of hyping it up. You're going to be a hype master to really build that excitement towards your event. So you're over communicating a little bit in case you didn't reach everyone the first time around. So the day of details. The production team, again, is going to be really helpful in helping you craft up that day of timeline to make sure the performance goes well. So you basically hand it off to them and they will take it from there, which takes a lot of stress off of you as the organizer. You'll also want to promote it the day of, so making sure your website and all your social media channels are up to date and you're giving real life updates like parking is congested here, try this lot instead. Other things like that to help your patrons know where and how to find the show, as well as any other helpful things. Oh, the show's delayed 30 minutes due to rain. So make sure you have ways to communicate with your team and your audience before the event. Then executing. You'll execute the event, and that's where your day of timeline comes into place. So make sure that you have that quality sound check before the doors happen. Make sure the musicians are in good standing, they are fed, or they have access to food at some point in time. Usually those performances are during the dinner hour. Make sure they have a private green room where they can breathe and be away from the public to prep prior and after their show, as well as safe storage too of all their gear and equipment. They also may need access to Wi-Fi or merch as well. So make sure you ask about that and just let the artist take 100% of those merch proceeds. It takes a lot of money to put those records together, and there's no sense in taking 10% off the top because you're really not going to get that much anyway. So those are some of the day of details to keep in mind. And now I know I talked a little bit about the curation, so I'll just dive into it really, really briefly here because we just have a few minutes left. So if you do this once, you might as well just do it again, right? The great thing about a concert series is that it keeps momentum coming back to your business, and you have all that attention on your business for like a whole month too, rather than just one day. And once you learn how to do it once, you get into a routine and you just rinse and repeat the next week. So some of those case studies, again, was Northfest, Concerts on the Pier, and Glen Sheen Unplugged. And I'll just very briefly touch on those. I do have a video here for Northfest. If you want to look it up, it's like a few minutes long, so I'm not going to play it for you today because we're at the end of our show. But Northfest was a festival with 10 bands, 7 stages in one day, all at UMD. So Brianne, think about that as St. Scholastica having a little music festival over there. It's a really great way to engage the local college scene with the Duluth music and get them out into the community so they don't just get stuck on campus. This was a really wonderful event that provided inspiration for many more to come. Then we've got Concerts on the Pier. This was one of my claims to fame with Glen Sheen, and it started the year before I arrived. And then we really built it up the following 5 years. It grew to have thousands of people there. So there's a view of a nice boat-in show of a few hundred folks. And that was just a wonderful experience. So I thank all of you for coming out to that. But if you have any questions about creating those concert series, you basically just do the same thing 4 times. Or, spreading those out from 1 week to the next, or maybe once a month too, is another great way to go do it. And there's also a really great video of that too. It features Black River Review. Tim Lukeb was maybe going to be on this workshop, but that this video just kind of shows what Concerts on the Pier was. But to wrap it up, consider ditching that Spotify playlist that you might have at a show and putting live music instead. Live DJs are also a really great way. If you can't pull in the live band, get a live DJ there instead to bring in more energy. Budget for talent fees and hospitality for the artist. Make sure you plan well in advance to work out any kinks, especially if it's your first time around. And make friends with the city of Duluth to know all the permits and things you need to have in place if you're hosting an event outside or at a city park, for instance. And then support live local music whenever you can and have fun. And now would be the time for Q&A. I know we're at noon, the lunch hour, so if you got to jet to lunch, I totally understand. But if you want to hang out for a little bit, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, especially ones pertaining to your own events. So thank you so much for listening, and thanks for supporting live local music.
Thank you so much, Emma. Like Emma mentioned, we can stay after for a few moments to answer any questions. I will be sending out the recording of this session, and I do have those links for your book recommendation and those YouTube videos too. So I can distribute those as well.
You're good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions while we're here?
Yeah, I did have a couple. So being that we're looking at potentially doing some live music, and we don't have a stage and we don't have a sound system. So that was a couple things we looked into as far as like that renting sound equipment is expensive, especially for like a small club trying to get started with something like this.
Yeah.
So any places that you recommend for where we can actually purchase maybe like some used sound equipment, or where we would get help maybe finding, what to get?
Yes.
And-
I actually have a lead for you right now.
Okay.
So there's one, and this is the thing, like you kind of have to just start asking around in the industry, because a lot of people have like old stuff they're willing to get rid of. But there's one, Jerry Levine, he used to run sound up the North Shore at Papa Charlie's, and he was you know him, don't you? Yeah, he's really great. So he has some equipment that he's actually starting to unload right now. So we can share contact information. I can connect you with him, and he might have some good leads for you. But I also have reached out to Sound Central and T&E to see if they have any warehouse sales coming up. So a lot of times they try to unload old gear that they just don't need, or they're trying to, bring in the next generation of technology. So a lot of times they'll have warehouse sales and get rid of some of that, where you might be able to get some discounted equipment for use, because a lot of this stuff is built to last, and it lasts for a long time. So Sound Central and is a good place to start to get a quote, to just see, okay, how much is this going to cost me every time? And then if you're like, okay, that's kind of the top tier, then try Duluth AV Logistics and see what their rates might be, because then you can compare the two and see what that rental rate would be if you're going to host X amount. And then really just looking online, honestly, Facebook Marketplace locally, there's a few techs that will sell their gear that way. And then reaching out to those sound providers too, to see if they have any connections on equipment. And I know it's kind of like, well, if I'm showing you how to buy it yourself, you're not going to use my services. A lot of times they're open to like a hybrid of that, where maybe you invest in buying a stage and a PA, but you still need to hire out a sound tech for each show.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Good question though. Are you hoping to bring music to the American Legion?
Well, it's the All-American Club.
All-American Club, there it is. Yeah.
It's similar to like a Legion in a sense. Yeah, we're trying to. We're having music after the Festiversary this Saturday. So hopefully we'll we're trying to get it going though. Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, because it's right in the heart of all of that action. So that'd be wonderful. And
I believe so.
Yeah, cool. Any other questions out there?
I have a quick one, hopefully. Just kind of figuring out do you have some best practices for, if you are doing a series, kind of deciding on, there's a lot of options out there. And so just kind of deciding, obviously it's kind of based off your target audience, but is there do you recommend an application process, or I guess what is kind of a usual, or what do you prefer, I guess?
Yeah. So if you don't have an idea of those bands that you're like, I want to get all of these in, putting in an application process is really great. If you curate it yourself, you have a little bit more control over the lineup in a sense, but if you open it up to applications, that does make it much more equal and accessible for anyone and everyone. And you might get some bands in there that you'd never think of, and then, whoa, they turn out to be incredible and you want to book them on the bill. So I would be, if you're starting a new thing, and especially with all of the venues that you're overseeing with multiple stages to select from, it might just be great to put a call out to artists and say, hey, who's interested in playing these stages? We'd love to hear from you. And then you can get all of their information that you normally would request upon booking, like the name of their band, their social media channels, how many followers they have, what type of music they create, if they have videos and photos and things too. So then you have a lot of information that you can review. But with that said, that also means you need to follow up with them too. And then it gets into the tricky process of some people maybe not making the cut. And that can be a challenging conversation sometimes to deliver that news. So that's one way to go about it too. Another thing to keep in mind when curating is that you want to make sure when all of your artists are together in a lineup that it is as equal and equitable as you can make it. And that means you have women's voices represented, people of color, any other underrepresented voices that you may not normally hear from. Make sure you give them some love. So you don't have the same types of people performing or the same types of genres too. So make sure your genres are a variety where you have maybe this series is just Americana music, or maybe this series is just hip hop, or this one is a little bit of everything. So have a variety of all genres and all types of creators too. Another thing to keep in mind is disabilities. So, Galen Lee, for example, performed on the pier. That took a lot to be able to facilitate because that pier was not built for anyone with any mobility requirements at all, because it just is old. So, and it wasn't very thoughtful of that back in 1909. So keeping that in mind and making sure your stage is accessible, not only for all performers, but also for all of your patrons too, and representing folks with disabilities as well. So having a wide variety of artists with different identities is really good for not only your community, but also for your lineup as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially for your first year, Megan, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I know it's a lot of venues and a lot of stages to manage. And a lot of people have very fond memories listening to Charlie Parr at the Brew House. So highly recommend bringing them back.
Thank you.
Anything else? I think we might then close it up. Emma, thank you so much. This was really tactical, like good, solid advice. So we really appreciate it. Thank you to Lake Superior College for sponsoring the series. We're happy to bring these to you. Of course, our chamber members free of charge because of them. And I will, like I said, follow up with the recording of the session and some of those resources that Emma shared. So thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you have an enjoyable afternoon.